Section 17. Short sale approval letters. Read before you celebrate. The word approved is at the top of the letter. Ashley has been waiting weeks for this moment. The first lender's written short sale approval arrives, and the word approved appears near the top. After everything David has been through, the missed payments, financial package, valuation, second lien, HOA issue, and repeated document requests, Ashley feels like the transaction has finally crossed the finish line. She forwards the approval to Michael with a celebratory message, and Michael calls her almost immediately. He asks whether she has read every page. Ashley admits she read the first page and saw that the lender approved the sale. Michael explains that in a short sale, the conditions following the word approved can determine whether the transaction actually closes. Ashley goes back to the beginning and reads the letter carefully. The lender identifies the property, borrower, approved transaction, financial requirements, permitted expenses, and a specific deadline by which the transaction must close. There are also conditions concerning payments from the sale proceeds. Suddenly, the approval looks less like a victory announcement and more like another contract management assignment. Approval is usually conditional. A short sale lender is agreeing to cooperate with a transaction under specified circumstances. It may require a particular purchase price or minimum amount of proceeds. It may limit certain seller concessions or closing expenses. It may establish how much can be paid to a subordinate lien holder. It may address real estate commissions or other transaction charges. It may prohibit the seller from receiving proceeds or restrict other payments from the transaction. This is why experienced agents read the approval letter line by line and compare it with the purchase contract, settlement figures, title requirements, and other approvals. If the numbers do not work together, the fact that the lender used the word approved may not be enough to get everyone to closing. Then Ashley sees the date. David's approval requires the transaction to close by a specific date, and the deadline is closer than Ashley expected. She immediately calls Daniel and asks whether Marcus and Elena's lender can meet it. Daniel contacts the loan officer, who explains that underwriting is progressing, but there are still outstanding conditions. Now everyone has a new clock to watch. If the closing does not occur within the approval period, the short sale lender may need to approve an extension or reevaluate the file. Never assume the lender will automatically extend its approval because the buyer needs another week. If an extension is required, begin addressing it before the deadline rather than after the approval expires. This is where transaction management becomes critical. Ashley calendars the approval expiration date. Michael reviews the conditions. Daniel communicates with the buyer's lender. And escrow begins comparing the lender-approved figures with the anticipated closing statement. The lender's letter does not rewrite the purchase contract. Ashley also notices that one condition differs from what Marcus and Elena originally negotiated with David. David asks, "If the lender says that's the deal, doesn't that automatically change our contract?" No. The creditor's willingness to approve a particular financial arrangement does not automatically amend the purchase agreement between buyer and seller. If satisfying the lender's conditions requires changing a contractual term, the buyer and seller may need to negotiate and properly document that change. Think back to Chapter 1. Contract law did not disappear when the transaction became distressed. Offer, acceptance, mutual agreement, written modifications, and proper documentation still matter. A short sale adds another decision maker to the financial process. It does not give that decision maker magical authority to rewrite every agreement between the parties. One paragraph makes David nervous. Then David reaches language discussing his loan and what happens after the transaction. He reads it twice and asks Ashley, "Does this mean they're releasing me from everything I owe?" Ashley remembers what Michael has been teaching her throughout the transaction. The legal consequences of an approval letter can be extremely important. Language concerning release of a lien is not necessarily identical to language concerning release of personal liability on a debt. A seller should not assume those concepts are interchangeable. Arizona statutes, such as ARS Section 33-814, contain important provisions concerning deficiency actions after certain trustee sales. But applying Arizona deficiency law to a particular seller's circumstances can require legal analysis. A short sale also involves a voluntary transaction, rather than simply assuming the rules governing a completed trustee's sale produce the same result. Ashley tells David that an Arizona attorney should review any language concerning remaining liability before David relies on it. That is exactly the right answer. Then David asks about taxes. David's next question is predictable. If part of the debt is forgiven, does that count as income? Again, Ashley should not become a tax advisor. Federal tax treatment of canceled debt can depend on current tax law and the taxpayer's individual circumstances. The rules have changed over time and can include exceptions or exclusions depending on the situation. David needs a qualified tax professional. A real estate agent saying, "Don't worry, you won't owe taxes," may sound helpful today and become a major problem next April. Now everyone has to get to closing. After reviewing the approval and consulting the appropriate professionals, David decides to proceed. Marcus and Elena agree to the necessary contractual changes, and those changes are properly documented. The title issues appear manageable, and escrow updates the anticipated settlement figures. For the first time, everyone is working toward the same closing deadline. Then Marcus's lender sends Daniel a message. The buyers are approaching the federal disclosure stage, and the timing of the closing disclosure must be handled correctly before consummation. David looks at Ashley and asks, "What's a closing disclosure, and can it delay us?" It absolutely can affect timing. And when a short sale approval has an expiration date, a few days can matter tremendously. That's where we're headed in Section 15. TRID, Closing Disclosures, and the Distress Transaction. Online Discussion 1. Ashley receives a short sale approval letter with the word approved on the first page. Why should she review the entire document before telling everyone the transaction is ready to close? Answer. The approval may contain important conditions involving price, proceeds, allowable expenses, lien payments, commissions, seller contributions, and the closing deadline. Ashley needs to determine whether those conditions are consistent with the purchase contract, title requirements, other creditor approvals, and the anticipated closing figures before assuming the transaction can proceed as planned. 2. The lender's approval requires a financial term different from the existing purchase contract. Does the approval letter automatically amend the buyer and seller's agreement? Answer, no. The lender's approval establishes the conditions under which that creditor is willing to cooperate, but it does not automatically rewrite the purchase contract. If the lender's condition requires a contractual change between buyer and seller, the parties should negotiate and properly document that change. 3. David asks Ashley whether the approval letter legally releases him from all remaining debt. What should Ashley do? Answer, Ashley should not make a legal determination concerning the effect of the approval language. A lien release and release from personal debt liability are not necessarily the same thing. She should involve her broker and recommend that David obtain advice from a qualified Arizona attorney before relying on the language.